What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another live stream from the Bitcoin Bros. Coming back to you guys, we're going to be going into Bitcoin treasuries, giving an update on the market. Also, going to be looking at what's going on with Ethereum as well. Ethereum's been popping off, and there's some companies that have been actually doing the MicroStrategy playbook, but with Ethereum. So we'll be discussing that as well in today's video. And if you are new, we have these live streams every Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We just go over the market, give our opinions on everything that's going on normally, like in the Bitcoin and financial space. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. We're on Twitter, YouTube, and Rumble live streaming right now. So just throw them in the chat. We'll try to get to your questions. Everything we talk about, nothing is financial advice. This is all just our opinion. So take it for what it is. We've been talking about Bitcoin, crypto, Bitcoin treasuries, MicroStrategy on YouTube for about 4 years now. So just giving our thoughts. And like always, we're going to start with Sean looking at the charts. We're going to look at some Bitcoin charts, some other charts. So if you want to go ahead and pull that up, Sean, we can get it kicked off here.
Yeah, give me one quick second, guys. Appreciate you all for joining. Let me go ahead and share my screen up really quick. And for those that are on, go ahead and smash the like button, share if you haven't done so already. We appreciate the support. So let's go share screen. Okay. Okay, so right now we're looking at Bitcoin. Bitcoin is coming in at 119.3K. And we actually did put a new all-time high in today. Looking at this on the weekly chart, we see we actually went up to 122,000. The bigger question is, will we get a continuation to this upside? Looking at this on the weekly basis, we could see that this looks like some type of inverse head and shoulders pattern. Could we come back down? If that's a possibility, let's zoom into this price action really quick. So you can see that we could come back down and have a back test of this around the 110, 111 range before we get a continuation to the upside. And zooming out on the price action, we see just been sort of trading in this channel, respecting the lower support, upper resistance, lower support, upper resistance, lower support. The next upper resistance, if we went straight up tomorrow, is around 140,000. But if we just sort of keep this same trajectory, we'd be looking at around 150,000. We want to see if there's any divergences when that happens. We're probably not going to get a traditional bear market, guys. I know that's sort of the new sentiment, but the buy pressure is definitely there. But and it's not slowing down. One thing to pay attention to right here. Let's share this next chart, looking at the Bitcoin dominance. So what we've been seeing as of this week, a lot of altcoins have been blasting off and making some decent gains. Now we have said alt season's dead, and we're going to sort of stand by that sentiment. And this chart is right now the reason why, but we just have to wait and see how things play out. So as far as the Bitcoin dominance chart goes, you see that we've just been stair-stepping our way up through this channel, and we actually fell out of this channel back in December and got back up into it, and just been sort of respecting this support for the most part. We fell out here, and this upper resistance we've been hitting our head on multiple times. And looking at the RSI, the overbought range where we get these reversals at, it's been around the 72 range. We haven't got too overbought. Zooming out on the charts, the highest time frames has been 77. That was back in the 2019 bear market. We kissed this one time in October of 23 during the bear cycle. So as this price is going up, this is a technical divergence, but we're still technically putting in higher lows. And as of right now, if we zoom into the current price action, we can see that we hit our head on this upwards resistance and then had a meltdown. So this is a meltdown in Bitcoin dominance, going from 65, almost 66,000 down to where it is right now. So 62,000, I'm sorry, 66% down to 62%. And as you see, this orange line, ignore this one below, um, this is sitting right at sort of where support has been, sort of on an uptrend. As you see, we've just been sort of stair stepping our way up. So will we fall through this support? Will we get back above this 20 moving average? Looking at the way the moving averages are curling up, this still seems a bit bullish, and it's just because everything is pointing up and to the right now. We'll see if we fall out of this channel, and the structure to break this upward support to pay attention to is 55%. So technically we could break out of this, guys, and we could have a lot more blast off in alts. We could come down, let's extrapolate this 50 moving average. We come down to potentially maybe the mid 50 range. And if we consolidate here, alts will still run. And then if we have a continuation up, this would still just be a high, a lower high, a higher high, a higher low, and the trend will still be your friend till the end. So we just have to wait and see how this plays out. There is opportunity. There has been an opportunity with Ethereum, and let's look at the Ethereum chart right now. And this looks pretty bullish, but we're on multi-year. Sorry, we're at multi-year resistance right here at the November 2021 peak. We peaked around 4,900, haven't got up over that $5,000 threshold, and since then, Ethereum came down to the bear market and came up and hit its head on this downwards trending resistance line once and twice. That was back in February and March of 2024, around the 39 and 3,600 area, respectfully. And then looking at this looks like this could have been some type of, cup and handle pattern that seemed to be forming. But right here, we had a potential breakout in December. It kissed 4 grand and then fell back down. So, this still is a potential bullish setup, as this is the low range here. And, we could be putting a higher low in right here. And we'll see if we have enough momentum to get past this support or this resistance where we are right now. And this still could be some type of big cup and handle pattern, or double bottom, however you want to look at it. But the area to pay attention to is where we are right now, because every time we got back to these areas before this downward resistance level, we pop up like we did last time, and it didn't have a continuation and we fell back down. So this is like an area to pay attention to what Ethereum does. As far as the RSI goes, this is on the weekly. We see that, let's see here. It does seem that it's in a potential uptrend. So the trend is once again your friend to the end. Could this have a reversal down to the downside? That's a possibility. You can't discount anything in these markets. Nothing's 100% guaranteed. But Ethereum is at a level to pay attention to. If we get a breakthrough this, you want to see a couple candles closing on the weekly above the downwards resistance line, this orange line. And if we do get through this, there could be a pop. We could see maybe a potential new all-time high, a lot of euphoria, then maybe a cool off, coming back down and retest this, flipping previous resistance to support before getting that continuation to the upside. And if this is some type of cup and handle pattern, the target for Ethereum would be up to about 13,000. So 13,200 to be exact, almost $10,000 more than where we are right now. So that's what we see with ETH. And then one thing to pay attention to is also looking at the Ethereum dominance. And why are we only looking at Ethereum? Ethereum is the number 2 crypto. It's sort of a good indicator to look at when you're trying to get a temperature check of the alt market. And if Ethereum is moving and outpacing Bitcoin, there's a high probable chance that the rest of the alt market's going to follow suit. Now, we didn't see that in the in the 2023, 2024 run up, we've seen Solana and some other coins, popping off. So Ethereum still held that number 2 spot. We've seen XRP jump quite a few positions in the overall crypto market capitalization. But Ethereum really hasn't had that, massive bull rally that people have been waiting for. So looking at this is an interesting chart. This is the Ethereum dominance. We see from here, we fell down to about the 7% range, and we had a pop up to 11% where we are right now. And right now, it seems that we could get a continuation at least up maybe to the 13 or 14% range. The way this is looking, this could be some type of rounding bottom that is playing out. Don't really see any type of divergences as of now, but we have to wait and see how this price action plays out. The Ethereum could be a decent setup. If it passes above all these moving averages, the area to pay attention to the upside is 21%. As you see, years have passed, that 21% range acted as resistance multiple times before he fell off a cliff. So could we rally back up to that before getting a cool off? That's definitely in the cards. So that's where we see with Bitcoin and ETH. I did a lot of talking there. Did you want to weigh in on anything, Aaron?
Regarding Ethereum, no, I think it's interesting that you have companies. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. Putting Ethereum on the balance sheet, and Tom Lee, he's also doing something with Ethereum. So it's interesting to see that the Bitcoin dominance is falling a bit here, and see if it continues or not.
Let's show this really quick. Now that you mentioned Tom Lee. Oh no, we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a little bit. But let's pivot over and look at strategy. Strategy's been waking up. There's been a lot of naysayers that are back being believers for strategy. And we showed you this. This was actually from the last live stream. We showed you the technical targets. In the short to midterm, we could be seeing like a $600 plus strategy price. And how euphoric this can get with what's coming up with the S&P listing. It could, catapult it to over $1,000 before this year is out. Not financial advice. It's just what the technicals are showing. That's barring any black swan events, any catastrophic things that happen in the market. So just be, just mindful there. But strategy, once again, the setup is looking good. Nothing too much has changed since last week. We have had, a pop as of late. We went up to about close to 460. So we'll see what's going on. Saylor hasn't been hitting the ATM on the underlying common A. He's been using those preferreds for that ATM mechanism, which is extremely accretive from a common A shareholder perspective, and also just a Bitcoin per share or Bitcoin yield perspective. So there's a lot of bullishness in the short to midterm for strategy, and also long term there. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about there, Aaron?
Yeah, in fundamentals, there's a lot of hype around the Bitcoin treasury companies. They've been blasting off over the past year, and they're going to continue to do well. But I think what could be the thing that makes these treasury companies, like their MNAV, may actually go lower, and strategies could go higher if we see a Bitcoin price if we see Bitcoin go $200,000, $300,000 in a short period of time. Like strategy right now has 600,000 Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin goes up $100,000 US or $200,000 US, that's a massive gain. I think that's quick math. I think that's around $60 billion. So I think that's when people will start to realize how far ahead strategy is versus all these other guys. Because if you look at some of these other small Bitcoin treasury companies, they might have 1,000 Bitcoin, and Bitcoin goes up $100,000. That's not the same move. That's strategies gonna be making billions, tens of billions of dollars. while the other companies, smaller companies, are still doing good. So I think the price of Bitcoin will reach like some type of escape velocity, and I think strategy is going to be the big winner in the long term. Not to say the other companies aren't going to do well, but um, strategy is going to be the biggest player, and I think they'll be the biggest company in the world eventually. So,
Yeah, agree there. While strategy will probably be the first Bitcoin treasury company to $1 trillion plus valuation, you'll get some Bitcoin treasuries that are worth billions right now that goes to hundreds of billions, and some that are just starting off that might be worth half a million or higher that are worth tens of billions in the future. So it's all relative to the zero, because these companies, the ones that are doing the treasury strategy in a creative fashion and not using too much leverage, the ones that do that in you know the correct manner, they'll see definitely a magnitude of increase in their overall company valuation. With strategy once again being the big 600-pound gorilla in the room that we always talk about. Let's share this tab here really quick. This was a post from Tom Lee, so shout out to him. And what this shows is the return since the Bitcoin treasury strategy that MSTR, Saylor, and team initiated back in August 11th of 2020 to present day. And you can see from start to present day at $13 a share up to where we are right now, around $450 to $5 a share. You're looking at a 35x gain, 3,400% increase. So in that same time frame, you can look at and see like how many X's are actually from the actual strategy that strategy Saylor and team are doing versus the actual X's of Bitcoin. So if you just bought Bitcoin, spot Bitcoin back here, this appreciation is just an 11x in Bitcoin from August 11th of 2020 to present day. But with the Bitcoin treasury strategy and what Saylor and team has implemented, they have an additional 25x due to the treasury strategy. So making sure that these companies are doing this and in a creative fashion, and managing the correct mechanisms to make sure that their MNAVs don't get too compressed. That can be definitely detrimental or the biggest gainer for the company. So that's something to pay attention to 100%.
definitely. Um, Let me share something really quick here with I just saw. Can I share my screen? I just saw somebody talked about U.S. sold 85% of their Bitcoin. They know more than we do. It says getting the ISO 2022 coins. Let me see if I can share here.
Yeah, you can go ahead and take over.
So this is what he's referring to. And this is funny because like I saw this news yesterday when I made a video, and somebody came out with this and did some research, and they said the U.S. government only holds around 29,000 Bitcoin. And I was like in the video, I was like, well, this is going to be funny if we see Cynthia Loomis or people in the government like start to talk about it. And like as soon as I was done recording the video, I saw Cynthia Loomis tweeted this. But I don't think this is a bad thing. Like if the U.S. government has 29,000 Bitcoin and they thought they had 180,000 Bitcoin, Trump's going to look at that. His entire cabinet is going to look at that. All these guys that are pro Bitcoin in the White House, they're going to look at that. And we're going to be like, oh my God, we're losing the Bitcoin race. They're going to look and see where they are stacked up against every other country. And right now, I think China has like 150,000. Ukraine has like 60,000. And there's another country that has a decent amount of Bitcoin. So if we only had 29,000 coins as a nation, that would put us in like spot 5. So I think that Trump and the entire cabinet would be like, hey, we need to become the biggest Bitcoin treasury company, or I'm sorry, not company, country in the world. And I think that we'll see the United States come out and say, hey, we need to we need to at least get more than China. Like I think this is actually a bullish thing. Is if this is true. Obviously, we don't know if this is true or not. Uh, but any thoughts there on any of that?
Um, yeah, it's interesting if it's true. It's speculation until it's proven otherwise. There's a high probable chance that could be fake news. It hasn't had any really credible backing or like actual government officials coming out and confirming this. There has been some notable X accounts that have been talking about it, so it has gained some traction there. Um, but if it is true, I would say it's definitely bullish because this is a Bitcoin arms race. And one thing this current administration understands is, the importance of holding scarce assets. So, Trump, I think, and his, team, his kids, they all, have done you know, invested into crypto or well invested on the personal end. So they have David Sachs, being the crypto czar. So there's a lot of like, rails that are in place to, make this transition of when this occurs. And yeah, once again, it probably is, some type of FUD or fake news. I didn't really pay attention to the price action when this first came out. So it could be something to attempt to pull the price down, and they weren't too successful at that because, at the current time we're still at 119.5K. So, um, just it's interesting. It's bullish if it's true, and it's still bullish if it's not. That's the beauty in it because I think if it's true, it'll light a fire to the current administration to lower rates and, get the money printing, the money printer spun up, and go harder than what they probably would have went before with the 200,000 that they, potentially have. So that's my take on it. We'll see what comes of it.
Yeah.
So did you have anything else on that?
Um, Not really. It'd be funny if it's fake because the reason why I saw it was David Bailey. He had put out a tweet a couple months ago, and it was like some analyst responding to it, and they like put this screenshot up and said, "Hey, this is how much Bitcoin the U.S. has," and he paid him money like to do that research. I think it was like 10,000. So he might have got scammed there, but we'll see. But yeah, we can go to the next topic.
Okay, cool. Let's pivot to let me reshare really quick. Let's talk about MetaPlanet really quick as far as Bitcoin treasury companies. And there's been a lot of gripes in MetaPlanet investors, a lot of people selling off, pivoting back to strategy. So what's going on right now with MetaPlanet and other Bitcoin treasury companies is, Bitcoin has made its next leg up. It's around 120,000. So as Bitcoin moves, these companies that have these MNAVs at 5, 10 MNAV, they're going to get compressed. The MNAVs are going to get compressed. And to think of it like MNAV as the overall sentiment, some of these companies that have been doing this long enough, MetaPlanet is one of them, you can sort of see, what MNAVs they oscillate in between. And right now, this is the current MetaPlanet chart. And we can just see like this is a potential channel that we tried to break out of. You got a mid support line that we potentially are sitting at right now. Could we fall through? Could it fall farther? Yeah, that's definitely in the cards. But looking out, zooming out on the charts, you can see that it could fall down even farther. It could go back down to the $5, $6, $7 range. In my opinion, it's a buy opportunity. The MNAV will get compressed even more. That means either Bitcoin is probably ripping higher to the upside as these MNAVs for some of these companies will get compressed. Right now, historically, though, looking at this chart, MetaPlanet has historically traded between three, with three being somewhat of the floor of the MNAV. Looking at this chart, you see you get the expansion here. and you come back and trade back down towards 3. And right now, we're even lower to this. We are even sharing here. Right now, this is MetaPlanet's analytics site around that 3.23 range. So, you know, not financial advice, but if history's any indication of, what's to come next, it seems like, there could be some type of coiling of this company. SWC seems like it's primed for takeoff. So just, as Bitcoin moves, these companies are going to compress. Think of it like a pop can that's just sitting there getting shook. And, when they rip pretty quickly and into the upside. And the last 2 times the MNAV for MetaPlanet was down at 3. Shortly thereafter, a month or two, you've seen that rip to the upside for the next leg up. So it's not guaranteed, not financial advice, but just, don't shoot the messenger. We're just telling you what we see in the current charts. So that's just one Bitcoin treasury company. There's a lot of them. So yeah, that's everything on MetaPlanet. So what's the next topic you got?
There's somebody in the chat asking for the CME gap. Do you have that up at all? The CME gap for Bitcoin, I believe they're asking about.
I do not.
Oh, okay, we can talk about that later or get to it at a different time. But yeah, they've been asking about some chart.
CME gaps tend to fill. I was looking on the higher time frame, so let me dumb it down to the daily and see. But let me see. Yeah, we can come back to that. I'll look into it while we talk about the next topic.
Yep. Let me see what's next. We can go into the ETF flows. ETF flows this week. Bitcoin's looking pretty good at around about 1.4 billion this week. So the ETFs are not slowing down. The day's numbers are not in yet, so that's 1.4 billion before Thursday. IBIT has been leading the way. They've gotten $764 million on the 16th, and they have just been buying hundreds of millions of dollars almost every single day. So the ETFs are really heating up, and it's interesting to see, like, I wonder how long this can last or how long this will last. Like, they're the biggest ETF or the Bitcoin ETF for IBIT is the fastest growing ETF in history. I think it has like around $80 billion of assets under management. It's going to be interesting to see. Obviously, if we go into a bear market, it probably will slow down. And when we see times in the market where the traditional market looks a little spooked, like CPI is high, or if the job numbers aren't good, or if the traditional market doesn't look that great, we do see the ETFs sell. But I think the ETFs are a bigger like catalyst to a bear market than people like realize. A lot of people talk about like the Bitcoin treasury companies being the bear market catalyst because they're over levered or whatever their argument is. But the ETFs, I think if the market gets spooked, they could really sell off huge amounts of Bitcoin because they have $80 billion. And I don't know. I think that's something to think about. But outside of that, Ethereum ETFs are also looking good. $500 million yesterday. $730 million yesterday for the Ethereum ETF. That's probably the biggest day ever for ETH ETFs. So ETFs for Bitcoin and Ethereum looking good. And we're also seeing a lot more ETFs come down the pipeline with the altcoins. We're seeing a lot of altcoin ETFs now. So it could get pretty crazy in the ETF space, but we'll see what happens, and we'll see how the trend changes with all these ETFs. Anything to add there? I think you're
talking on mute. The ETFs, when it comes to Ethereum, a lot of the inflows is institutional interest. There is some retail that seems to be potentially showing up, but the alt party hasn't really fully started yet. If you look at the Google Trends, you do see an uptick in Ethereum. If you just do a quick search, it's still sort of like in bear market territory, but it had an uptick. Um, so most of it is institutional. Tom Lee had spoke on this. Do we want to pivot into talking about the ETH treasury companies?
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if you wanted to share what you had.
Uh, yeah. Let me actually don't have anything to share, but yeah, SBET SharpLink Gaming. Well, I guess I can share this here. Yeah, SBET SharpLink Gaming. They're the company that is doing the Ethereum treasury strategy, like how MicroStrategy doing the Bitcoin treasury strategy. Let me share my screen here so you guys can see this. They are raising. They're trying to raise $5 billion in common stock to buy Ethereum. I believe they're just buying Ethereum. I don't think they're buying Bitcoin. Their stock, as of late, has been doing really well because Ethereum, as of late, has been doing really well. And as more of a Bitcoiner myself, I think this is a little like it's a little annoying that people are just treating like Ethereum like the number two to Bitcoin. This is what we've seen in every other bull market. We saw it in the 2021 bull market, 2017 bull market. Ethereum is the number two, like the silver to Bitcoin's gold. And now we're seeing that in the traditional space with these companies buying Ethereum instead of Bitcoin because they see that there is just potential higher upside for Ethereum. But then you think about, well, where's the actual use case for ETH? Bitcoin is digital gold. It's the hardest money on the planet. It doesn't really do much in terms of everything Ethereum does with the DeFi applications and the games and the NFTs and all that stuff. So Ethereum does that while Bitcoin is, digital gold. We haven't really seen Ethereum develop. Like we haven't seen Ethereum like have a killer app yet. We haven't seen Ethereum go mainstream. We haven't seen any of these cryptos really go mainstream. But we see the price go up. And when the price goes up, people just, tend to want to buy the asset because they see it going up. So even though we're now in the traditional market with the Bitcoin ETFs and Bitcoin treasury companies, we're still seeing Ethereum getting brought. It's like Ethereum is just holding on to Bitcoin's like like coattails and just like riding the wave because it's a crypto and Bitcoin's a crypto. Like Ethereum is it's really a company, and you don't know how much Ethereum gets released every single day. You don't know how much Ethereum is burned. You don't even know if Ethereum is going to be the best DeFi project out there. In my experience, I've used Ethereum and I've used other DeFi cryptos, and Ethereum had the worst user experience. So I don't know if people are investing in Ethereum because of the DeFi applications or because of the stablecoin stuff that's going through now. But I don't know. I guess it's just a lot to be. There's a lot of question marks around Ethereum. So I guess we'll see what happens though with these companies that are putting ETH on the balance sheet outside of putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet.
Yeah. Just for some metrics, Ethereum roughly issues 1,700 ETH per day to its validators. Um, that's a huge drop. I think it was almost not quite a 10x drop, but I think it was over 10,000 ETH a day that miners used to receive when it was proof of work prior to the transition over. And then the burn rate, I think, is a few hundred ETH a day. So that's just the metrics behind, I guess, if you want to have a scarcity comparison, which there's really not when, in comparison to Bitcoin. I did see something interesting where as of late, Tom Lee has expressed some interest in Ethereum and has mentioned that, Ethereum could be the preferred choice for some of these big companies such as like JP Morgan, Robinhood, and others to potentially build on. Now, that isn't 100%. I think might be some speculation behind there. There is an ETF this passed, so there is some validity behind the Ethereum ecosystem. But once again, there is no real world application that is built out to scale as of today. So could that come in the future? Yes, this is, in our opinion, still the early days of Bitcoin and the crypto ecosystem. But a lot can change from cycle to cycle. One thing that I will say about Ethereum is that, since being involved in this, economy to any capacity, ETH has held its ground as the number two um, altcoin, if you may, and it has grown cycle to cycle as far as its market cap. It hasn't outpaced last cycle yet, but we're still in this current cycle. The bull run's not over with yet, and I think it's getting closer by the day to its previous all-time high. It's around 3,500, 1,400 away. So we'll see what happens the rest of this cycle. We'll see what developments occur, and we'll continue to report on this to you guys. The inflows have had an uptick. There's a small micro uptick in the Google Trends when it comes to retail returning. So this is a lot of institution driven uptick when it comes to the ETF inflows. So for whatever that's worth.
Yeah, one last comment there, just to talk about Ethereum. Ethereum has a $422 billion market cap. XRP has a $212 billion market cap. BNB and Solana combined have around $200 billion market cap. And right now, MicroStrategy's market cap, I think, is around 120 billion. So I think it just goes to show you, like, Ethereum seems way overvalued to me. XRP seems way overvalued. Or you can look at it from different lenses and say MicroStrategy is probably really undervalued where it is right now with 600,000 Bitcoin.
That's probably going to be the true flipping right there when strategy passes ETH in overall market capitalization. And we potentially could see that this year, depending on the performance of Ethereum going into the end of the year and also strategy. So it's a lot of interesting things going on in the space.
Cool. Do you want to talk about the Trump executive order next?
Yeah. Do you have that pulled up?
I can pull up a tweet or something. Let me pull it up.
Yeah, there's definitely some bullish news from the Trump administration today. I'll wait for Aaron to pull this up. But, if this does come to light, what we're about to talk about, this could be a huge catalyst that could, like how Saylor says, all your models are going to be broken. All these price targets and things that we're showing, Bitcoin at 140, 150, that'll be priced in. That's like extremely, extremely conservative because with this news, if it comes to light and what comes of it, it could be a huge, huge catalyst here. Let's take a look. So the U.S. president is expected to sign an executive order that would open up 401k plans to alternative investments beyond traditional stocks and bonds. And this is according to, what people briefed on Trump's plans. And this could open up $9 trillion of potential inflows into digital assets. So it's going to be very interesting to see where a lot of these inflows go to if this does become an option. And it's going to be interesting to see what the rails look like. And was this all the underplay of, Fidelity and some of these other big companies buying, starting their own Bitcoin treasury. So they have Bitcoin on their company's balance sheet, but could they be holding that for investors? But the thing is, you're not going to really own the Bitcoin. It'll be a digital number on their dashboard. So you won't have any private keys. They're not going to send it. But what that looks like, transitioning it over from a traditional 401k account into, I guess, a Bitcoin holding account. It'll be just interesting to see that, on these platforms, and that'll show, just another step of adoption. So this is major news for adoption, but also the inflows will be ridiculous as well. Now, the caveat to that is I'd be interested to see if Bitcoin itself is is an option to invest in. So it's like, for instance, if there's a ticker for Bitcoin, big BTC USD on Fidelity, how many people would opt into actually going all in on Bitcoin with their retirement funds? Um, I think maybe some of the younger generation will do so. And of that $9 trillion of potential inflows into these other assets, a lot of that 9 trillion is going to be more senior individuals. So, we have talked to some people that are closer to retirement, and, we've had sort of, 50-50 skewed opinions on Bitcoin. Some don't understand it. Some think, they're priced out. Some think, they didn't do their due diligence. Some get it. So it's going to be interesting if this comes to light, like what these inflows look like, and just play with numbers. Let's just say half of this $9 trillion goes into Bitcoin. Um, that'd be $4.5 trillion going into Bitcoin, and Bitcoin at the current time, I know it's north of 2 trillion, but just to be more precise, it's almost 2.4 trillion, 2.38 to be exact. So that's about 4.5 on top of 2.4. So you're looking at almost $7 trillion market capitalization for Bitcoin. And I'm just getting my calculator here just to do some quick math. That's almost a 3x, 2.9x from where we are right now. So as far as like price goes, if half of these flows would go into a BTC ticker, um, that would take Bitcoin up to $350,000 for this cycle. Um, and that's just with these inflows. Now, fast forward a year, where do you see the inflows from global Bitcoin treasury companies? Right now, there's a few hundred. A year from now, there might be a few thousand. So these inflows are going to just keep compounding and compounding. That's not even including the ETF inflows, sovereign wealth, other countries. Um, like it could get really, really crazy. And Josh Mandel has that 444,444,000 target for Bitcoin. So just doing some quick napkin math with this inflows of the retirement accounts, we showed you how to get easily to 350,000. So overshooting that with the compound, interest when it comes to everything else I just said, maybe that 444 target will get hit. It'll be interesting to see, but it's definitely, this got released today, so this is definitely very interesting and exciting news if this does come to fruition.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing to add on to that, if Fidelity or BlackRock or any of these guys can get an in-like ETF or in-kind ETF where you could just send your Bitcoin there and hold your Bitcoin with BlackRock, I think a lot of Bitcoiners would do that too, because you would put it's just more secure having it on a cold storage wallet. You could just have it with BlackRock. I think they'd see huge inflows if they could get an in-kind ETF or something like that. So
it'll be interesting. And I do think there will be inflows from that lens as well, because, like people are really sleeping on like the preferreds that, strategies rolled out with. These preferreds have allowed, some sense of, yield on your Bitcoin if that like does come to fruition that you just mentioned. So definitely, you won't have your keys anymore. You're never going to receive that Bitcoin back. That's the downside in the back end. But you know, Bitcoin at $1 million, in probably the next 3 to 5 years. Um, be conservative, say 500K. If you are able to get that like with no taxable implication and then gain some yield in a traditional account, some people would be, basically in retirement mode from that lens. You don't really have to sell your Bitcoin per se, even though you would convert it into something different. You technically would sell it, but not sell it at a taxable event. But once again, not your keys, not your crypto. But that could be a huge catalyst that people are sleeping on. There's a lot of people that think that Bitcoin is already overextended. And looking at some of the on chain metrics as well, the on chain metrics aren't even anywhere near overextended. So, could we get pullbacks? Yeah, that's part of bull cycles. You're going to get pullbacks. We've seen a pullback from 110 down to, I think, 78, 76, 30% pullback. That won't be the first, won't be the last. But the fact of the matter is like everything is screaming to the upside, including on-chain metrics, including the global M2s. It's extreme bullishness across the board. So the fun's really just starting, and we could get this cycle to trickle into 2026. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out coming to Q3 and Q4.
True. Yeah, it's gonna be really the future of the cycle is like, are we gonna have 4-year cycles, or is now everything's different? So is Bitcoin just gonna go up 20, 30, 40, 50% a year for the next 10 years? It'd be interesting to see how that plays out. What else do we want to talk about? We had something on here about the Australian Bitcoin or Australian mortgages. You can now use Bitcoin for down payments. Is that what the news was?
Yeah, let me share this up really quick. It's just a quick X post. Um, Let me see where this is at. I got too many tabs open. Here it is. Share this. So this was, from Coin Bureau. Shout out to them. Australia just approved Bitcoin for mortgages. You can now use Bitcoin as collateral to buy a home under. So yeah, you're going to start seeing these mechanisms come out as adoption increases, and some people, to each its own. Like some people, sort of frown upon this, and everybody's situation is different. If the wife's begging you to get a house, and you know you have some spare Bitcoin that you want to put down for a mortgage, and you live in Australia, this is Australia, but this will be a global thing. I think you can actually do this in other parts of the world as well. I think like in the UAE as well, I think is an option. But yeah, this will come to the U.S. But the thing is that these companies just want your Bitcoin because they understand. Okay, even if say it's a $500,000 house, and you go put 100,000, 200,000 down, whatever number you please. That 200,000 in Bitcoin terms. Fast forward 10 years, you know, you have that could end up being millions and millions of dollars, tens of millions. So just keep that in mind. Denominate everything that you do in Bitcoin, and whether it's buying a car, whether it's just everyday expenses. Do you really need it, or is it something that you just want? So wants versus needs when it comes to this is, I think, the underlying. If you got Bitcoin to spare, you know, everybody can sort of gauge how much they want to spare, on their own. Once again, everybody's situation is going to be a little different, but it just once again is showing adoption and how scarce this asset is, and how these companies, even Fidelity, if they get these likes and all these things, when you send your Bitcoin, you're not getting it back. So, there is beauty and self sovereignty when you hold your own keys and you have your own power. But in certain situations, and there's always going to be those situations where people are going to have lifestyle expenses that need to be had. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, it's interesting. You talked about denominating your purchases in Bitcoin. Just today, the White House secretary was talking about Trump wants to remove all capital gains taxes for Bitcoin payments. So now we're getting Bitcoin in the 401k in the US. Bitcoin with potential mortgages are using Bitcoin to qualify for a mortgage in the US. And now they're talking about removing capital gains taxes so you can use Bitcoin for payments. So they're just fully adopting this, and they even want to use it as payments now. So it just shows you where everything is going towards. Everything's going towards Bitcoin. Everything's going towards BTC adoption. But
100%.
that's a where's sorry.
Wanted to say, just comment on. I wish I had some spare Bitcoin from Modern Day Drifter. Shout out to you, but you know, everybody's situation is different. But whatever your dollar cost average strategy is, um, that you should, I think, potentially implement that. That's not financial advice. It's just people are using Bitcoin as, um, a savings tool. So, whatever that savings is for you on a monthly basis, $500 a month, $5,000 a month, or $50,000 a month, whatever it is, um, parking, your savings vehicle in Bitcoin. And, if you have some upcoming expenses, things you got to pay for, you might want to consider tweaking it, on a quarterly basis or month to month. But, you know, whatever your time horizon is, looking out on a multi-year, 5, 10 year window, that money that you accumulate on a monthly basis, you'll be surprised. I know on our X account, we've posted, screenshots of, spending $1,000 5 years ago turned into $20,000 or whatever it is, and that's just money that you haven't, touched and that you didn't need, right? So you can't, spend money that you need to pay for your mortgage or pay for your bills on Bitcoin, obviously, because you need to live. But just whatever that dollar, it could be $5 a day. So um, yeah, shout out to you. I like 100% my savings tool. So even if I don't have a whole Bitcoin to spare Bitcoin could be 0.0005 Bitcoin, and that'll be a large a large dollar value in the future. When Bitcoin goes up to you know $1 million a coin or multi-million dollars a coin, at $1 million a token, you know, 0.005 Bitcoin, that's 5 grand. So there's some type of purchasing power there. And right now, that costs you a tenth of that. So that costs you $500 to get that same amount. So just, put that all in perspective for what that's worth.
Yeah,
Um,
I love the chat. Bitcoin is the goal. I'm accumulating as much Bitcoin before the next leg up. It's 100% my savings too, and we 100% agree with everybody in the chat. Bitcoin is the goal. Bitcoin is the hurdle rate, and yeah, $1 million Bitcoin. But if you look over the long term, we're going to tens of millions. Not financial advice though.
yeah, yeah. There's no ceiling. So I was just looking out over the next 5 years. Once again, not financial advice. And we just want to share this one last thing with you. This is showing you the once again the scarcity in Bitcoin. But OG Bitcoin whale Adam Back. For those that don't know him, do your research. Follow him on X. Uh, he launched his own Bitcoin treasury company. It's called BSTR, and they started with 30,000 Bitcoin, instantly making it number 4. Now, he probably didn't buy this Bitcoin because he's been around since Genesis Block 1 and had communications with Satoshi and email and such. But over time, this is just another competitor to Bitcoin treasury strategy, and 30,000 Bitcoin right there have been sucked out of supply and never being sold. This is just one more company. So this is going to be the norm as time progresses. There's a couple hundred companies now. There's going to be a couple thousand companies soon, and then there's going to be then it's adoption. It's if you're a company, you don't have a Bitcoin treasury strategy, what are you doing? That's sort of where this is heading to. So
Yeah, and a catalyst that nobody's really talking about right now is Trump Media's earnings call August 8th. They raised some money. I think it was around $2-3 billion. So they may have some Bitcoin. I think we're gonna find out on August 8th. So they may have a couple. They may have 10, 20, 30,000 Bitcoin that we don't know about. So that'll be another catalyst to look out for. That's going to be August 8th for them.
yeah, 100%. So you got that coming up. You got the strategy S&P inclusion coming up. There is some talks about XRP potentially getting integrated to some extent. Brad Garlinghouse has been doing like a huge marketing campaign, and they've been around for a long time as well. So they've been around almost just as long as Ethereum, and not promoting it at all, but it's just there's been a lot of talks in certain camps when it comes to XRP, and could there be some real world application there in the near future? It's a possibility. The price has been, I think, if it's not at an all-time high, it's near an all-time high present day. So it's a lot of bullish catalysts across the board. One thing I'm leaving with this: the Bitcoin dominance. Pay attention to it. ETH dominance seems to be in an uptick, and if Ethereum continues its uptick, Bitcoin probably will have some type of bigger retracement when it comes to its dominance. Bitcoin can run up to 300,000-400,000, and its dominance can still drop. So understand that. That might mean that the ETF inflows for Ethereum have had a huge uptick. Retail is, back to the party, and it could be a lot of just catalysts across the board when it comes to over the next 6 to 12 months. So exciting times.
Yep, a lot to look forward to. S&P inclusion, all this pro Bitcoin policy with Bitcoin payments, a potential Bitcoin strategic reserve. Nobody's even talking about Bitcoin Act anymore. I think that's going to get introduced probably in the next 6 months. You got a potential for Bitcoin ETF in-kind transactions. That's a huge one. And then all these companies buying Bitcoin. There's gonna be more every month. So a lot of huge catalysts coming. Anything else that we got to talk about?
Nah, I think that's it for today. I think we covered a good portion of the latest news out there. So as always, we'll be back next Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. And if you guys have any, specifics that you want to hear about that we're not talking about, feel free to shoot us an email. It's a bitcoinbros26@gmail, or you can hit us up on X, and also, any of our other social media handles, Instagram. We have something in the works for you guys. It's probably going to be in the next month or two, but it's I think a couple of you guys will like it. So that's all that I have.
Cool. Yep. Thank you everybody for watching. Like, subscribe for more content. Live streams every Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Appreciate everybody for joining. Catch you guys in the next one.